mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child that she's born, though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palm of my hands. Wow, this has been another tough week, hasn't it? Not only have you shared a secret that's been hidden deep in your heart, but now you've spent your week looking at more truth that's been really hard to learn. Over the past 20 years that I've been ministering to women who've been sold a live abortion, I've never stopped being shocked or heartbroken at the things that women are told. At the Crisis Pregnancy Center that I lead in Tampa, we receive close to 3,000 client contacts each year from women who are facing an unwanted or an unplanned pregnancy. They come to us having received all sorts of false information about the development of their unborn child, the abortion procedure, or the ease of their recovery. You've learned lots of statistics this past week, and some come directly from the abortion industry itself. You've looked at some factual information that women need to know but have no one to tell them. If we're bound up in our abortion secrets, how will we ever tell women the truth about the pain and the horror of an abortion? How will they ever hear the truth about the parts they forget to tell you about the so-called quick recovery? How will they ever know what God says about abortion if the church is silent in our woundedness? I was so very ignorant of any of those things when I chose to have an abortion. All I could think about at the time was my shame and my need for a quick fix. At the end of your session last week, you had some questions to ask yourself and to ask God about how you're feeling after all that you shared and heard last week. It's one thing to remember the details of our own abortion experience, but quite another to hear from your sisters in the group. I can't even count all the groups that I've led or the numbers of women that I've ministered post-abortion healing to over the past many years. Every single time I think of all the women and all the babies that have been damaged and destroyed by this lie of death. You've studied a new term called post-abortion trauma, and you've seen the many ways that choosing an abortion can affect your life, even beyond the loss of your unborn child. I'm certain that you've identified many things that you've experienced firsthand over the past years. This is a difficult journey, but it's a journey that will lead not only to your own freedom, but the freedom that truth will bring to many other women and young girls who are at risk for those lies. In your member book last week, I shared a poem that I wrote shortly after reading what God had to say about the unborn child in Psalm 139. I'm sure that you can relate to some of the feeling that I expressed in my poem as similar to your own. That poem was written in 1986, just 2 short years after I came to know the Lord. God has done so much in my life since those days. He's actually used my pain to minister to others. He's revealed His healing love in my life, and He has set me on a course that seems to get richer and richer with each new day. When I really began to dig in Psalm 139, it became my very favorite scripture. I heard it not only from my precious lost child, but for myself. Allow me, if you will, to pray it over you as you begin this session together. If you will, even though I'm not there with you, would you please bow your heads and allow these words from God just to wash over you, to sink into your heart, and to give you peace. Thank you, my Lord, that you have searched my dear sister and you know her. You know when she sits down and when she stands. You understand her thoughts from far away. You, Lord, observe her travels and her rest, and you're aware of all of her ways. Before a word is on her tongue, Lord, you know it. You've encircled her and placed your hand upon her. This extraordinary knowledge is beyond our ability to understand. Where can she escape from your Spirit, Lord? Where can she flee from your presence? If she goes to the heavens, you are there. If she makes her bed in the depths, you are there. If she rises on the wings of the dawn, if she settles on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide her, and your right hand will hold her fast. If she says, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night shines like the day. For the darkness is light to you, O Lord. For you, my most high God, knit her together in her mother's womb. She is fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and she knows that full well. Her frame was not hidden from you when she was made in the secret places. When she was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw her unformed body. All the days ordained for her were written in your book, even before one of them came to be. How precious are your thoughts, O God! How vast is the sum of them! Were I to count them, they'd outnumber the grains of sand. When she wakes up, she's still with you. O God, if only you'd slay the wicked and the bloodthirsty men. They speak of you with evil intent, and they misuse your name. She hates those who hate you, O Lord. Search her, O Lord, and see if there's any offensive way in her, and lead her in the way everlasting. Thank you, Holy God. Amen. God is leading you today, sweet sister. Just like the Psalm said, He's holding you and leading you. Now you hook up your carabiners and you move on in His power and His grace. Okay, ladies, our sisters have had a very rough week, as we all know. They've shared their stories for the first time, but they're back again. That's a good thing. But this week we know that they've studied some new truths about abortion. I think we ended our session last time talking about the lies that we all believed, or the things that we didn't understand when we went for our abortion experience. So this is our opportunity to share with them a bit about truth and lies in the abortion experience. And I think, Jane, you were going to start us off in our discussion. Last week our sisters have learned a new term, post-abortion trauma, and the things that involves. So why don't you share with them some things that you have learned about that?
I think in the truth session, the most difficult part for me was that I have to honestly admit that I knew the truth. I'm a nurse and I know a lot about fetal development, and I remember finding out that I was pregnant, and my first response was, well, you know, how far along am I? Because I'm going to have to rationalize this and make it so it's okay and have an early abortion and it won't be so bad. So I remember really going to my OB book and just having almost to become a different person, to deny the truth that I knew, to deny the God that was in me, to make this choice. And I really literally felt like I just changed. And all of a sudden, abortion that I had felt was against all that I knew seemed okay. It seemed at that time that the truth had to be whatever was going to make things better for me, that was going to fix this problem. And I'm amazed now at how the enemy, you know, just captured me in that and so distorted the truth that I was wanting to buy. I needed this. I needed a fix. All of a sudden I was thinking, it's good that abortion's legal. I understand now why women might want to do that. And I'm in this predicament. And before that, I was just a whole different person. And I changed so much and denied who I was and denied who Christ was in me when I went and had the abortion experience. But I mean, that, like I shared in the first session about the relief that I felt in sharing what I had done, that I really could only be that person for 2 weeks. And then I realized I just can't do this anymore. I cannot be that. I cannot convince myself that that was okay. And that's why I came to the group and said, I can't believe what I've done. Help me work through this. Help me understand how I could have done that. Who was that person? So that's kind of how it started for me, and understand the truth and how easily it can be distorted to fit what we need at the time.
Yeah, I mean, in that moment, I think this is where the enemy really swoops in, because in that moment, when you find out that you're pregnant and you have to make a decision, for me, there was no truth. There was no truth. I didn't even think about what the truth was. And I grew up in a Christian home, and I knew it was wrong. And with my story, my dad had just died 2 months before, and now here I'm finding out that I'm pregnant, and I'd already just pushed away the death of my father. Now I'm finding out that I'm pregnant, and I had a doctor, well-meaning, but who gave me the money and pushed me right out the door and called it, another doctor, and it was over before I had any time to process it or even seek the truth. And this is, to me, where the enemy swoops in and just steals every bit of everything that we know. And because there's so much shame and so much fear, I had so much fear. And so I didn't even seek the truth, and nor did I feel like anything was even around me that even seemed right or good. It all just seemed dark and dirty, like what you were saying.
Well, I think this is a point where the enemy really attacked me in my journey, because you know, I was feeling very dirty, you know, as we've used that word a number of times. And when I was at the clinic and then, you know, was gone home, and then I got to the group finally, I remember I was 9 weeks pregnant, you know, when I had my abortion. And that was the first thing I did, looking through all of that material. I went to the 9 weeks, and I looked at what my baby looked like at the time I did it. And I was sickened to think that that's what my child looked like. And I ripped her from inside of me. And, you know, reading all that material, I mean, I just went home and I threw up. I couldn't handle that. And then, you know, Satan just beat me and beat me and beat me about that I just didn't want to go on. You know, I was finished. And, you know, another thing that hit me, learning the truth, was to find out that there's actually somebody at the abortion clinic that has the job to make sure they get all the pieces. I couldn't handle that. That just came from my toes and all the way up inside and just, enraged me. And I just thought, oh my gosh, look what you did.
The doctor, I don't blame him because I still made the decision. But to just give me the money and send me over, and then the way that I was treated in the doctor's office, which was an OB-GYN, so there were women in there having babies, and ushering me in, and you know, when I was crying, putting their hand over my mouth, telling me to be quiet, sending me out the back door. There was no truth anywhere in any of it. And that is the thing that is so painful, that we want to tell everybody. Don't make a decision based on, you know, that moment. We have to, and I don't know if I would have made a different decision if I could have gone home and thought about it. I probably wouldn't have. I probably still would have had the abortion because I was so afraid of hurting my mother. But somebody else said that previously, how you shut down and you decide right then you're not going to feel anything anymore. I remember going home after that and ordering a pizza and eating it, and then being so disgusted with myself that I could even do that. Like, how could somebody actually do this, sit here and eat pizza after this? And so then it just went from one bit of disgrace to the next. And shame.
And I think too, you know, you really do buy that theory that it's a blob of tissue. You keep hearing that phrase, blob of tissue. I was an educated college junior, you know, and I was raised in a Christian home with a good, strong moral family, very strong, supportive family. You know, part of it was not wanting to disappoint them. But, you know, I'm smart. I mean, how I bought the lie that this was a blob of tissue. And part of it is, you know, you don't know, you don't really want to know, and you don't maybe realize all the workings of the female body, which I think we need to make sure we tell our daughters about. And it wasn't until I was pregnant with my first daughter after I got married, and I was in the OB office looking through, you know, your new baby and the joy and my free little goodie packet, and looking at, you know, the 11 and a half, 12-week baby, and, you know, just having the flashback, oh my gosh, it was perfect. And that stole so much of the joy of my first pregnancy from the baby that I was going to get to hold and have, that it really ruined that. When I found the truth, it was really, I felt so lied to, that who in the world could believe that nonsense, that would be a blob of tissue. Making girls who are ignorant of the facts understand what the truth is, that if we can be a part of God's hands on earth and voice to speak the truth to these girls, that they don't do or make the same mistakes, you know, help lift the veil.
I think an aspect of the truth that was definitely new for me was the truth about post-abortion. I would admit that I did know fetal development, but I had no idea what it would be like to have post-abortion trauma. No one would make a choice for abortion if they knew what the aftermath is. And to me, that's the truth that I want to share with women is, maybe you do know all this about your baby and development, but I want to tell you, you have no idea what it's going to be like afterward. If we could get that across, which is what we're trying to do.
I knew the truth, and it's so hard to look back on that and understand that I was also a nurse, and had already spent a number of years in that career field, and even did prenatal care as a nurse practitioner. So I certainly knew the truth, but I don't think even in my group that I had identified how fearful I was of others finding out about the truth about me. That piece was my desperation. I had a career, I was single at the time. What in the world would, all of my colleagues think of me? What would my family think of me? And it was just that desperate place that I probably asked myself. I didn't make a quick decision, but I probably asked myself every day, what am I going to do? And knowing the truth, I still made that choice, and that was hard. And when I was in the group, I'm hearing all the statistics and all the information about the post-abortion trauma, and I was even suffering myself from irritable bowel syndrome. But at that point, I still had not made a connection between some of my own symptoms and that piece. It was just not going to happen until a little bit later. There was more truth for me to understand and see.
Right. With somebody like you, Sue Ann, and Jane, when you're women who did understand the development of the unborn child, there are those of us who had no clue about that, but then those of you who did, how did you feel responding to the information that you learned about the abortion industry itself and the agenda
it's interesting. I already knew a good bit about that, and I think that was a piece of anger that I had to work out, because I had already sort of worked through some issues, because I wanted to volunteer. I wanted to be involved in
a pro-life position.
The pro-life position, I had taken that position. I was able to read the articles. I was able to talk to people.
But did you connect your abortion experience at all? Because you had said before you came into the ministry in denial.
I think I was still all about fixing everybody else, and I was not looking at me. I think that's where I was.
It was obvious to me. Fetal development, unfortunately, became a fact to me quickly at a young age. But they had told me that now I had a freedom. I could just go on and live the rest of my life. And that was the truth I believed for a long time, not knowing that it was truly the lie that put me into that place of secrecy and shame, but in a state of confusion, where I think the biggest piece for me, and the realization came through the healing, through the Surrendering the Secret, was the place where I realized that what it did is it blocked true intimacy for me in almost every relationship that I had. Because remember, people who loved me allowed me to, they actually, wanted me to do that and helped me to do that. So I knew they loved me, so I felt...
And thinking that they were doing the right thing, thinking that they were helping you, that's another lie, that parents are sold and that even pastors or leaders are sold, this is the easy out for this young girl.
And she has her whole future ahead of her, a bright future. What would she have done if she had been in there? So the intimacy piece was huge. And I think also because I wasn't a Christian the majority of my life, I remember being totally surprised at the statistics and the breakdown of women who choose to have abortions. And I think I was more stunned because here I am for the first time entering into this world of the church, and there were so many women in the church experiencing it and going forward and doing it, but still knowing, and that shocked me. And the biggest piece that shocked me the most was the fact that these women were saying, I know God will forgive me for doing this, but the people within my church will not. So therefore I choose that route. And I just remember actually sobbing through that when I learned that part, because it just broke my heart. I'm like, what is going on? It's like, this just isn't making sense.
That makes me think about the lies that we believe that sometimes hinder us from seeking healing, is because as Christian women, we think we're supposed to have it all together.
Right.
We
or
went in to help others, or at least fake it, right? Because you're a Christian. You should be able to, buck up and get over it. And I think that is a lie from the enemy that keeps us in bondage, that we're ashamed to say, I need help. And it keeps us from coming here. and to see that we were Christians and Christians do make mistakes. You know, like I actually just for a moment there felt bad saying that I was a Christian, but in the next breath saying that I made that decision, even now. But Christians do make mistakes. Women that are raised by good families do, and it's that fear, it's that evil panic that sets in that got to do something now, fast, quick, don't think.
Well, several of you have mentioned about the fact that in your churches you were very afraid to speak out, because those sometimes are the very families that are pressured as much or more than anyone. How can their daughter show up pregnant? How can their young youth leader, you know, become pregnant in church? Those are sometimes the ones that feel most pressed to have this perfect life and have it all together. So we have so many, hundreds upon hundreds of young women who come through the pregnancy center from Christian homes. So you know that's part of the truth that we are looking at.
I think another lie that I bought was it's going to make it all better. You know, I mean, that's the third lie. You know, the developmentalist one, and then there's no truth about post-abortion trauma. And the other lie is after you do this, everything will be okay. Yeah. You know, that's what you want to believe. You know, I actually remember leaving the doctor's office and going, okay, did that, I'm done. Now I'll go on, and my life will be just the way it was before. And you know, that's a lie, and that's what they tell you. You know, this is just like you're going to get your teeth cleaned, you're going to have an abortion, and then tomorrow will be a new day. And it's not. It's a very dark day.
Especially if you've had friends that have done it, or if you know a lot of people that have and that are around you. And nowadays it seems like, well, everybody's doing it. It can't be that bad if everybody's doing it. And you know, and being in college, I knew so many young girls that had, which also made it a little bit easier. You buy that lie.